The elderly in Japan are using exoskeletons to delay retirement. Oh,
Well,
Jesus.
yeah, say no more. The
Wow.
future is now.
This is probably the most. We've had a series of fairly negative articles on this show, but this is probably one of the most depressing ones there has been. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
really, this is where we've got to. We want to put elderly people. Oh, sorry, elderly people want to be using exoskeletons to continue to have to work. I mean,
It is rough. It's like
I don't think they want to.
even one of the first lines of the article. It's like older folks in Japan are now using exoskeletons to help them do their jobs as they spend more of their lives in the workforce. Like, how miserable is that?
God.
It's age 65 and up. Is it? Is that right? Japan does have the one of the oldest populations in the world. Like,
This is it. Like, Japan's got the issue where they don't have enough young people, so they don't have enough tax base to pay the retirement funds of the old people.
so they have to keep working.
This is basically what the Western world's going to look like in about 20 years, but Japan's there now. As the birth rate gets lower and lower and lower, I think the birth rate in our country now is like 1.42%. The only reason that the UK has a positive population is because of immigration. Japan's been like very negative immigration for a long time. So Japan doesn't have the increase in population. They're currently going through a decrease in population. And because of that, the younger age tax base is not enough to fulfill the retirement. If the average birth rate is like 1.4 children, that means for every 2 parents, you've got a negative thing. So they have to earn enough for 2 people to be able to pay enough tax for 2 people to get 2 people for retirement.
I think isn't that number? Sorry, what did you say the average child per household was there?
It's like 1.42 or something like that.
Right, because I know that I'm pretty sure that if say a couple were to have only one child, that actually contributes negatively to population. In the long run, that actually causes a decline rather than an increase. So
well, it does, because our whole entire government works with the idea that they don't tax industry, they tax people. So the more amount of people you have, the higher tax base you have. The number you're looking for is basically you want 2 kids for 2 adults, because that keeps the population the same. Really, you want about 2.01, but most Western countries it's just like 1.4, 1.5. It's a low thing, because when you got a higher sort of middle class economic base, you just have less children because people focus on their careers more. They focus on other things. And Japan's had this for ages now, and as I said, they haven't had high enough immigration to Japan to offset this, like most other Western countries have.
So you reckon it's sort of history that's biting them on the arse a little bit in a way?
Yeah, history that we get to look forward to, because this is just Japan showing us what a negative birth rate does. And a negative birth rate basically means that people don't get to retire because there's not enough money there to be taxed.
Well, there's the thing, though. Regardless of a negative birth rate, do you reckon this is going to be something that comes to, to the Western world even? Do you reckon America and the UK would eventually take things like this?
We're definitely looking at this. You look at the government spending now. I think it's close to like 30% that we spend in pension payments.
Yes, they're gonna want to do away with that then at some point.
Yeah, this is why it keeps going up and up here. You've got to be 67 now to retire in the UK. Okay, that's probably going to go up to 70 in the next couple of years, and it's probably going to go up to about 75 in the next decade. Okay, when you at the age of 75, if you've spent all your life in your career as a builder, when you get to the age of 60, you're starting to struggle, aren't you? So when you get to the age of 70, you got told, you've got 5 more years of being a builder, you're just not going to be able to do it, are you?
No.
Because your body would have just been beaten up from all those years of hard graft, so...
Exactly, yeah, it would have been worn down.
But with your government-issued exoskeleton, You'd be quite able there to still keep laying them
The
bricks.
thing is, though, the amount of people they'd have to give the exoskeleton to, and the price of some of these. Like, there's one that's I just saw it. It's made by Panasonic. It costs $5,500. And then Toyota's made one apparently. There's another one that's $1,300, and you squeeze a hand pump and it fills air powered muscles, fake muscles, which is pretty cool. It's very sci-fi in my opinion. Nevertheless,
$5,500 less of then, though.
What?
$5,500 is cheaper, a lot cheaper than a year's worth of pension payments.
And hospital bills for like banged up knees and I pulled my shoulder out.
Hip replacements and knee cartilage surgery. Yeah, I get you. And this suit, the one that's $1,300 with the air powered muscles, it can allow you to lift up to 55 pounds, which is quite a lot. This is just the suit that lets you do that. So that is quite impressive, if you ignore like the sinister aspect of it. And then it says right below, talking about a father who is in his 70s and was supposed to retire but is still working thanks to the muscle suit. So I'm not.
Go on, Taylor. I know you want to go. I know you want to go the. They just want to make us work to 100 and
Well, that's the thing. Like, you can't really argue that they don't, because if they want to squeeze more years out of you, they will. Like, they'll find a way to do it. It's and like, that's what I mean. Like, at the minute, I can't really decide whether or not it's exclusively a good or a bad thing. Like, I think the suits in their own right are pretty cool, and there's probably a lot of application for them. But if it is going to come down to a point of like, well, if we can just make this easier for everyone, we can raise the age of retirement to 80. It's like, great, wonderful. We're saving out on, work until their dying day. It's like, it really depends on what sort of direction it takes, really.
You're not going to retire.
No, I'm not. I know that. By the time I'm at retirement age, fucking hell.
You need to work on that private pension. That's what it's all about.
Nowadays,
I recommend everyone get a private pension.
Financier Chris over there. But yeah, so why not give these to people that are like middle-aged?
Yeah, I mean, why not, right? Like, I'm quite for that. Like I said, it has other applications. Like, picture people who suffer from arthritis, for example. A lot of them, there are people that are in their 40s, 50s that have that. Sometimes younger. And for them, like, it can make it a lot harder to work, obviously, and especially if they're in a job that perhaps involves a bit of labour as well. Yeah. Like, something like that would basically end their career eventually. If this suit could be given to them and, suddenly they can lift 55 pounds and they don't even have to think about it, I think that is a good thing. I don't have anything against that. But whether or not it's ever going to be something that becomes mainstream in the job market, hard to say. Because at that price, you think how many companies are actually going to shell out that much money for like one employee?
Yeah. Depends if it gets to a point where it's like, this building site requires steel toe cap boots, a hard hat, and a G5500 exoskeleton. Proudly brought to you by Panasonic. It depends.
It's actually, you could see it being a sort of thing that the company legally has to provide. The companies can't discriminate now. They have to make a reasonable adjustment. Is providing an exoskeleton suit to someone who works for you a reasonable adjustment?
I don't know.
It would be in the eye of the law. It probably would be.
In the eye of the law, yes, but in the eye of the company, they'll just find a reason not to hire that person, because they're not. If they can either have a reasonable adjustment, that's like going to be, maybe not even any extra money. Like, they might have to adjust something at the workplace or whatever, or make adjustments to like the person's shifts. Like, that could be considered a reasonable adjustment. But is any company actually, especially smaller companies, let's say, are any of them actually going to turn around and say, okay, like, we really like this person, but we're going to have to buy an exoskeleton for $5,000 so that they can work? I mean, realistically, how many places are actually going to do that?
If they've got the skills to be able to do the job, but they don't have the physical, like, ability, I guess, then surely that's like a couple of $1,000s and we can get them working.
Yeah, look at the
Yeah,
amount of
it's
industries
that.
there are in the UK where they're saying they don't have enough people who can do it, trained and all that to actually do the jobs. Like, there's not enough builders in the UK. There's not enough electricians and whatnot.
No, you cut out there. What did you say?
I'll just say, look at the amount of people, the amount of industries in the UK that are suffering because there's not enough people trained to do the job, like builders,
That is
electricians,
true.
plumbers.
On the same note, though, like obviously there is still the whole talk of the technological revolution, I guess, or where a lot of jobs are beginning, or in the future, a lot of those jobs that you just mentioned will actually start to be served by robots only. Like at that point, like that is the theory, isn't it? Like in a lot of these. I won't say that jobs, not the jobs you named in particular. I'm not saying they're like lower skill or skillless or whatever, but obviously a lot of talk is some of the lower skilled jobs, or just jobs in labor jobs, for example. Like there is talk that eventually robots will be able to automate that process on its own.
There'll be some of
So
the last jobs to go, though. They will be.
do you really think? No, there's the thing though. Like the discussion is like it's going to be those jobs that get hit hardest the first, and eventually it will even be the higher end jobs. Like eventually, once we have, for example, AI which can program other AI, that is another discussion that's been had. Like once we have that, there's going to be a less need for certain programmers. So in some way, it affects us all. But that's what I mean. Like let's say in the far away future, or maybe not even that far away, all of that has happened. Like it makes you wonder: is the exoskeleton like a gimmick in that respect, and is it going to be used for something else? Like, I mean, it's an exoskeleton, and it can enhance almost how much strength you have in some respects. Like, what other uses are we going to see from these suits? Like, what sort of developments are we going to see? Like, do you reckon now that we actually have working exoskeletons, like, do you think that maybe the thought of, say, super soldiers isn't actually such a far-fetched thing anymore?
Implying they're not already doing that.
Yeah, there you go.
But I think, just touching on what you said about, because you quickly jumped from, aren't we going to get to an age where it's just going to be robots and AI and all that stuff? I think these exoskeleton type technologies are very much a transitional tech rather than the end goal. This is kind of keeping a aging workforce going, or keeping people with an injury or something like that, keeping them working and able to do certain things. I think what you said about robots maybe replacing in the future will come, but it will come at a way slower rate than what people are prepared for, I think. And I think you're right, Chris, when you say that like the building site or the labor intensive jobs will be some of the last to go, because you can't afford to get those wrong, and the technology will have to be massively tried and tested very gradually by a massive amount of people before, like, moving. I don't know, I'm just trying to think, like, let's say diggers, for example, if they're controlled by robots and it goes wrong, you start digging up a whole street by mistake, you're talking about tons of mechanical equipment here rather than just a 3D printer. That's all.
That is very true. But I mean, if those are going to be the last jobs to go, what will be the first jobs?
It'd be like administrative assistants. Software is much easier to make than what mechanics is. So it'd be like admin assistants. It's like how there's been a massive cut of lawyers in recent years, and it's because the most intensive job for lawyers was discovery, which was just reading through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of documents. Now they just scan that through an AI, and it just picks up the best part. Most law firms now need half of the lawyers they have, because the discovery process just isn't that big of a deal. And you'll get the same for admin assistants and all that. It's much easier to make software than it is a robot, isn't it? As we keep saying about this robot revolution, in the 60s and 70s, they actually thought it was going to be physical robots, but really it's just going to be numbers ticking on a computer.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, Coming back to something you said, Adam, about you're keeping a workforce going. I mean, on a similar note, let's say there is someone who, let's for the sake of, let's say they have an injury at work, and in any other case they wouldn't be able to continue working. Like they'd have to go and find either an easier job, or they'd have to go on disability allowance, whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's not forget, like, despite that, this person, what these people that are having their work life, they're having it extended. But some of these people that do go through these injuries or illnesses, there might be someone who's going through, as dark as it is, let's say there's someone going through cancer as well. This person's going to get up every morning. They might feel like absolute shit. They can't get out of bed. But the company says, but we've bought you this lovely exoskeleton. Like, you haven't got a reason not to be here. You can do this. Like, we've made it so. Like, do you really think that's right?
But
I don't disagree. I don't disagree. Like, if, like, say there is someone who's at retirement age but they want to continue working and they're struggling, fine. But is it something that could actually play at a disadvantage to just like the common people, especially if you think, shit, I'm ill, and I've been struggling with this for a long time. I need time off, and they say, well, no, you don't need time off because you got this. Like, why would you need time off?
I'd like to think that the regulators and the people who actually make these policies and like employment laws and stuff will be a bit more compassionate than that. But maybe there'll be like a middle ground, perhaps.
Maybe, but even now, like, compassion isn't really a thing in the business world.
No, but there is such thing as employment law. Right?
It isn't. There is employment law, yeah, but it's like once you get into a job, like I don't. It depends. If you're in a smaller company, yes, but I don't believe in compassion in larger companies. Personally, I don't. Yeah, HR.
Sorry, I meant by the people who make the rules of what businesses are allowed to ask of their employees, rather than the businesses saying, "Oh, you take it easy, but we're not going to make you wear this today because X, Y, and Z." I mean, like the laws that will be set and the requirements that will be set because of this perhaps emerging technology, rather than the individual businesses. I think they will be the ones to be like, guys, that's pretty fecked to even consider trying to make that person work, and then that's where all the disputes will be, rather than because the companies, like you said, they won't care. They're like, come on, get out of bed, lift it up.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I would like to believe that the lawmakers would make it appropriate, but it's when it comes to things like that, and it comes to workplace law and hiring laws and all of that, it's sadly, it's not always as black and white, is it? Sometimes companies do find ways to jump through the hoops, and that's the only thing exploit loopholes even.
Employment law in our country is really stupid anyway.
Huh?
Employment law in the UK is really stupid as it is anyway. Like,
is it?
Yeah. Like, there is basically no employment law for the first 2 years of your employment. They could sack you for any reason.
Nice.
You don't have any right to an employee tribunal in the UK until you've worked for the company for 2 years.
Is that still the case?
Yeah.
Yikes.
So for the first 2 years, you basically are just owned by the company. And it's only after 2 years you actually have a right to go to an employee tribunal and get something changed.
That's crazy. I suppose in some ways, though, it's like it makes a little bit of sense, because I guess you don't want people just coming into your company then immediately demanding change.
Yeah,
because then it would be too hard to moderate at that point. I feel if you allowed that, I suppose you do have to put a limit on some things. It really depends on how it's done. As long as they haven't got a gun to everyone's head saying you can't do, you're not allowed to say that. Take it back. As long as they're not doing any of that, I think we're doing all right. But once again, I don't. We're a lot of companies tiptoe that line.
I think let's bring this back to the people perspective of this, like, exoskeleton kind of enhancing your body kind of tech. I think there'll be certain people and groups out there that will look at this and like, oh, great, so my dodgy knee will allow me to no, even with my dodgy knee, I'll be able to start doing what I like to do with X, Y, and Z. With whether it's, I'm just trying to think of something random off the top of my head. Let's say they move bags of concrete around, or they're trying to build something for friends or whatever it is. I think they'll look at it like a positive in that way. But like we've discussed in the last 15, 20, is if this is adopted by lots of people and lots of companies, then as you said, it might get to a point where it's, oh wow, we can make people work harder because they're going to last longer, I guess is the.
And that's another thing with it. The keywords, they work harder. Even if this is a positive and you do get these people continuing, you've got their work life expanded, or just picture a job that just uses these in general in the future. That might become a danger, where they come to people and say, hold on, you're not working, you're not meeting our criteria, you're not meeting the minimum, you're not meeting our expectation, you've got this exoskeleton, why aren't you working at a faster rate? But
technology's done that throughout the whole year. It's like back when there wasn't voice dictation, people were like, oh, we expect you to write 2 pages. Now with voice dictation software, oh, we need you to write 100 pages of text by Friday. It's these things do change with tech, but I suppose
look at the farming industry. You got one man in his tractor now doing what 1,000 peasants used to do.
Yeah. What do you mean you only picked out 125 carrots? We haven't got a machine that does 2.5 million in a week. Where have you been?
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, it kind of goes both ways. It can be looked at as a negative, both, I guess, for Japan because, and I guess exploitative workforces, because people have to work even longer than they probably should, and maybe it will implement some form of exploitation, like, oh, you've got this, why don't you keep working, raising the limit, as it were, in a negative light. But then, as Adam said, on the good side, you might be building, I don't know, a massive, amazing barbecue for your friend or something, and then you just use that, to build it, as opposed to, wearing yourself out and then you can't go back to the job and, feel 100%. I guess overall, it's amazing that people are able to do more with this sort of technology, as opposed to sit back and think, oh, I wish I could, but I'm not as young as I used to be. So
I think it's one of those things where there's always going to be two sides, I feel.
Yeah.
I'm reluctant. I think it's cool. I think the exoskeletons are cool, but I am very reluctant in terms of what the future may be with them. But I'm not gonna sign my soul away on it.
I see it more as a positive than a negative, and I think that with the discussion.
Oh, me too. But it's just sorry, I'm not trying to cut you off. I see it as a positive. It's just I'm not going to ignore the potential harm that could come from it.
Oh, of course, yeah, absolutely. But it's
the potential harm you're stating though is just people working. People should work.
Yeah, but where do we draw the line? How long should they work for? Do we want them to work till 75, 80, 85, 90?
If people haven't got a pension, they should work to as long as they can. No one has a right to retire.
They want to. They shouldn't feel like they're being forced into that position, though.
Well, then they should save money so they can retire. Then.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not the duty of central government to pay people when they hit a certain age. People should have money saved, or they should be expected to work until they drop.
Indeed, but at the same time, there are other things that contribute towards that. Look at temp roles, for example. Some temp jobs, which for some people, there are some people that may not be able to get anything other than temp jobs. Some temp jobs don't contribute towards a pension. They don't. They refuse. They don't need to. The law states they don't have to.
People can always start a private pension off their own back, though.
Yeah, Yeah, that also depends on how much money they make. It's all a bit of a cycle. That's where like the morals and like the clash comes in with this for me. Like it's not. I don't think it's gonna be. It's gonna be like this. It's gonna be like the driverless cars. It's gonna take. I think it's gonna take professionals a long time to really make appropriate decisions with a lot of this. Like it's not going to be like an overnight thing, without a doubt.
Indeed.
That's not to say like this isn't going to be mainstream. Like I don't. If it is proven to be successful, and fair enough. Like I won't. I'm not going to be taken to the streets to like protest it. But
yeah, I'm sort of with you, Chris. Like for the last when you've been making your point there, Taylor, you've been saying that like this is just going to enable or basically make people work until for longer periods of time, not longer periods, longer. What's the word? God, I'm really not being able to string sentences together. This one
Longer than they should.
Longer than in their life than they should. But at the same time, I'm sort of with Chris to say like, if you're able to and you need to, then is that a problem?
Well, if you need to, no, not in the slightest. It's like I'm not. I don't necessarily care about people doing it if they need to and they want to. Like at that point, there's not really a question about it. It's more the people who. It's more the people who like are in a difficult spot in their life, and it's like perhaps the person who hasn't been able to build up their pension, who hasn't been able to afford to make a private pension, or they haven't got much of a pension from all the work they've done. It's more.
And this is really a solution for them to keep making money.
I was going to say isn't this a great thing? Then it's like great. I'm not limited by my elbows are worn out, my shoulders are a bit dodgy. Now I can have this tech that's going to be able to make me or allow me to work 10 more years and get some money.
10 years is a bit generous. Like, that's assuming that they're going to.
I'm just saying, like for example point.
Yeah, I feel you. Like, I don't disagree there. It's sort of it's a hard angle to have, the one I'm trying to take here. Like it's hard to put it in words, but I don't like assuming that businesses will exploit their employees, but whatever it may be.
I think the businesses aren't exploiting their employees in your scenario. The businesses are just getting employees to work.
I definitely get what Taylor's trying to say, because, basically you've got a tool, and they're going to use the tool that's very useful to kind of, make people work even further, maybe more than what they're comfortable with. But I think the issue with that statement is that I think the exploitative side of things is much more separate in terms of, because you can say this the exact same thing about computers, right? You've got computers that make tools easier, but then you've still got things like eye strain, RSI, and all these other things at the end of the day. And I think if a company is not being ethical, then either take the legal precautions or leave.
The fact, if a company wasn't being ethical in the first place, this new technology coming out isn't going to change that.
Yeah,
that is true.
That's what I'm trying to say. I 100% understand what you're trying to say, but there's only so much you can do to stop things like that. And what quickly kind of back to what Adam was saying in terms of slowly changing things over time, in terms of taking out the jobs for robots and AI and all the rest of it. If life were to become more jobless, as it were, it would have to happen, extremely slowly, very, very slowly over time, because the biggest changes in laws and life and things like that happen very slowly over time without people noticing.
And that was a good point that was made. Like, if a company is one to exploit their employees, like obviously technology isn't going to it'll change how they do it, but it's not gonna, it's not. If it's a company that does it, they're gonna do it. It's simple as that. So perhaps it's not so much an issue with the technology, but more an issue of the people who are running things, which is where it all comes back round, which is why things like this are so difficult to sort of discuss, because like there are so many different uses and outcomes and consequences. So, because like I'm not agreeing with anyone in saying that it's like a good thing for those who want to continue work, but it's things like this are very hard to view outside of like a dystopian perspective. Okay, like that's all I'm saying. Like I seem fuck. It sounds great at first, but like, wow, how did I get to this point? Like I'm 75 and now I'm in one of these and I'm doing a heavy labour job when before I was doing this XYZ. It's like I do pray that I won't have to be in that position where I feel like I need to continue past the age of retirement, whatever that may be, by the time I reach that stage. But you can't predict the future, can you? So I suppose this is one of the, because like, for all we know, this might prove to be only a short-term solution. For all we know, like, because if there's different types of suits, there's obviously certain ones are going to be more effective than others. Certain ones will can handle more weight, and then with the better they get, the higher the price goes. So like we can't really say for sure exactly where things will go from here. Like so take warehouse jobs, are warehouse jobs going to invest in exoskeletons for their employees? In my opinion, in the current day, not a chance. In the future, maybe, but how would we know? Like we don't know.
You got to remember, as the technology expands, it's going to get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper.
It's true, yeah. I mean,
and when it gets down to like a couple £100 a suit, if it's a warehouse job, would you pay a couple of £100 a suit if your employees can now lift the box up that they weren't previously able to lift up?
That is kind of a baller idea, though, isn't it? Like, imagine being in a warehouse job and all of a sudden you just pick up this giant fucking parcel and just hold it above your head and it just doesn't bother you. That is.
And then you're midway through picking up that heavy object, and then the suit fails. It's like, oh, right, nice one.
Fails, the box lands on your head and fucking paralyzes you, and then you get millions in workplace comp. Yeah. It's like, I think, all right, I'm starting to see the benefits in this, boys. Come on. I see a civil lawsuit waiting to happen. But that's just, yeah. Right now, I don't think there's we can theorize, but like, I don't think it's. We'll see if it gets mainstream, and at that point, I suppose we'll actually see what changes it brings, including workplace laws. Like I think it was Chris that said that. Like those would be. I think it was. If it wasn't, I'm sorry. It would be. Those would be changed, hopefully, to fit with this. And
I don't think the employment laws will be changed. I don't think this will change the employment laws at all.
You don't reckon?
Well, no, it's not like a big. It's just a piece of a technology, isn't it? This should be viewed the equivalency to a conveyor belt system. It's just an increase in efficiency from technology. There's no major and change of employment here. Coming
back to that exploitation, like, who was it that mentioned like the employment laws?
Me.
All right, sorry, it was you, Adam. Like, I mean, do you not think that there should be changes to employment laws if this is something that was to become mainstream in like the job market?
No, I think this is what Chris was about to touch on. He was like, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but you're basically saying, this is just a more efficient tool that can be used, and as it stands, the employment law will remain the same.
Yeah,
and until
that changes,
employment
law wasn't changed when the printing press came out.
True. This might just be an argument for people to be able to do certain kinds of jobs at a later age. That's all.
Is that not an argument that the employment laws may be slightly outdated, though, if they're not changing with the technology? Is that not?
Yeah, but why does this? Why does this automatically mean that it is going to make people work later in their lives, though? Because not every job is labour intensive.
People we say, some people say, "Fuck it, I'm not going to do that," and like, fair enough, but. Yeah, so I don't know. I think with employment laws, I think if something like this was to enter like a market like that, I think they should be changed. Personally, I don't. It's like gun laws. Like it's like as more and more guns come out across the world, like you got to change the laws. Like you can't use the same laws that you use when you had to fucking hand load a musket.
Hold on. Let's maybe steer away from guns for now.
Fair enough. Okay, but even that's my point. Like as things change, so should the things that so should the lawmaking. Like it can't remain the same forever. Like it needs to change. Things should change. Like if technology is going to change everything that.
What change in employment law do you think would be necessary for this day?
Once again, it comes back to the theorized exploitation.
Yeah, but Taylor,
I don't know how you think there will be an increase in exploitation in this.
On that logic, though, that means that when strong coffee came out, people would be expected to work later because it allows people to be more awake.
Now we are truly theorizing now, aren't we?
No, but it's the same argument. There's a technology that's come out here that allows people to exert energy and lift heavier things, right? That's the fact. Whereas coffee that came out as a stimulant doesn't mean that it's going to be like, okay, now people are more awake towards the end of the day. That means we can make them do more stuff. That's like a similar theory that that was potentially said to going to be eventually happening. Just because they've got the tools to make people work harder and longer hours doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. Is what I'm trying to say.
No, of course. No, I completely agree with that. Like it's not destined to happen. Like, I mean, coffee is an odd, but
I know. It's the first thing I could think of, but
very, very different. But it's like I do see what you mean. Like it's just
beers now. You can just kill that woolly mammoth quicker.
That's like, oh God, it's just so many cases of it, isn't there? I mean, maybe it's just one of those things. Like I think as technologies come out, it's when you look at it, I suppose in some ways things have adapted on their own in some respects, but. Once again, like it's a very mixed bag the way I look at changes and how people respond to them and how companies respond to them. Like I think it really depends on where you go because obviously no two companies are going to operate the same way, and that's just my that's my hot take on it. Like I'm not sure if technology like this should be given absolute free rein, but. I may be completely wrong, and it might be nothing but a positive. I suppose we don't really know yet.
I don't really see this changing policy as much as, let's say, a forklift has. You know, similar sort of thing, lifting heavy.
I don't really understand where. Do you think there were people when the computer came out saying we need to change employment laws? This is going to start exploiting people. This is just a new bit of technology. It's just going to increase the efficiency of production.
But I think the reason why we've got to this conversation is because in a certain case such as this, where elderly people in Japan are using it, we've basically said, okay, so this is going to happen worldwide, I guess.
Yeah, that's assuming it goes worldwide, isn't it? Like that's the thing. Like these scenarios, it is an assumption that they will be sort of streamlined, and they'll be like the main tech that you see in. Labour jobs for the most part. I'm not sure if there'd be application for this in other areas. There may be, may not be. I'm not sure. I mean, sure, super soldiers, I guess. That's the problem. Like, would something like this fall under the Computer Misuse Act, for example? Like, what if a worker comes into his warehouse one day, puts on his exoskeleton, and using his power of being able to lift a total of 55 pounds, just throttles another employee and fucking, like it's things like that as well. Like,
but would that be any different to someone coming into work, getting into his forklift, and accidentally killing somebody, running them over?
Absolutely not. And it's like computer misuse as well. Like, there's no people coming into work and then stealing all the data on the on the servers and fucking doing whatever they will with it. Like, there's been cases of that, hasn't there? Where there's a guy got sacked and then he went and shut down the entire system before they took his name off the list. He went to prison for that though. But even so. Like there's also little things like that. Like even if it's not a case of the business exploiting someone in some way, you know, I suppose regulation is going to be needed. I think that's the better ground to take here, because something like that, if you're going to give someone an exoskeleton, like, you have to be careful doing things like that.
I
Just
think
in general, like,
we also have to be careful not to overthink this.
oh no, like this is all very iRobot, but
because all this is a structure with hydraulics in it that can lift heavier stuff.
Yeah,
It doesn't necessarily mean
it's not going to stop me from throwing my coworker across the office, though. Let's say that.
Yeah, I think
with,
the forklift was an apt comparison. This is basically a forklift.
Yeah.
was it, boys? You reckon it was better than my coffee comparison then?
Yeah, I'll
Much
give you
better.
that. Much better.